Hello everyone and welcome to Hadi MedTech channel. Now that we understand the concept of variables and we know how to create and use them, it's the best time to learn some rules about how you should name the variables before you start using them extensively in each piece of code that you create. I will explain the rules and conventions for naming variables as well as the benefits of adopting these conventions. At the end of the video, I will share a link to a quiz that you may want to use to test your knowledge right after watching the video, while the information is still fresh in your head. Adhering to the rules and conventions of naming variables correctly in Python improves code quality, readability, maintainability, and collaboration, while also helping in debugging and reducing the likelihood of errors. Actually, there are rules for naming the variables, and there are conventions, and both are important. What is the difference between the rules and the conventions? Rules are strict requirements imposed by the Python language itself, enforced by the Python interpreter and may generate syntax errors if not followed. Conventions, on the other hand, are guidelines followed by Python developers to enhance code readability and maintainability. While not enforced by Python interpreter, these conventions are widely adopted within the Python community for consistency and clarity. Let's start with the naming rules. Variable names can contain letters in lowercase or uppercase, digits from 0 to 9, and underscores. They cannot contain spaces or special characters such as exclamation mark, $, percentage, or any other special character. Variable names must start with a letter in lower or uppercase or an underscore. They cannot start with a digit. Variable names are case-sensitive in Python. This means that variables named result in lowercase, result capitalized, and result all in capital letters would be considered different variables. Variable names cannot be reserved keywords in Python. These keywords have predefined meanings and are used to structure the language syntax. Let's create some variables and see how Python interpreter will determine whether they have valid variable names or not. So we'll create a variable called name and give it a value of Tom, and this variable name is accepted by Python interpreter. So if we print name, it is accepted. Now let's try to create another variable and give it a name starting with a digit instead of a letter. So for example, we can call it 3 name and give it another value, and here we have a syntax error because Python interpreter will not allow us to start variable name with a digit. Let's now try to create another variable, and in the name we will use a special character different from the underscore, for example exclamation mark, and we give a value to this variable. And here also we have a syntax error. So the exclamation mark is highlighted here in IDLE. That means it's not accepted in naming a variable. The only special character accepted is the underscore. We can even add the underscore at the beginning of the name. And you will see this later in some more advanced courses, that this convention is used for some variables called private variables, but it's not the purpose of this video. Here we want just to see how that it is accepted in naming a variable. So if we call it, it will print the value. We can also create 2 different variables. In fact, they look the same, but they are different. The first one is age 12. It's all in lowercase. And the second one, okay, I will rearrange the screen. And this is one of the drawbacks of IDLE compared to other with other IDEs. We cannot clear the screen in IDLE, so I have to add another line here. And this is another variable, and we give it a different value of 25. And now if we call age, the first variable in lowercase, it still have the value of 12. And this is the capitalized age is a different variable, and it has a different value. So variable names in Python are case sensitive. Now let's try to name a variable using reserved Python keyword. For example, if is a reserved Python keyword, and let's try to give it a value. But you see here that it is already highlighted, so Python interpreter determined that this is a reserved keyword. But let's try to give it a value, for example, string called condition, and press enter. And this is a syntax error. This is invalid syntax, and in most IDE editors, most of these reserved keywords will be highlighted, which may be helpful in the beginning of your journey to learn Python, while you are still not familiar with too many of these reserved words. So these are the rules of naming variables, and we will now see some conventions. We will see now some conventions for naming variables in Python. Snake case. It is written in lowercase letters only, and the words are separated by underscore. For example, username, total volume. There are other conventions like camel case or Pascal case. However, if you want to follow the PEP 8 or Python Enhancement Proposal 8, which is a style guide for writing Python code, then you better use snake case for naming variables and keeping the other cases for naming other objects. You will learn other objects later in your Python journey, like functions, modules, classes, and so on. Avoid single letters names. Except for counters and iterators, we will use counters in the next videos of this series, as well as iterators a little bit later, where using a single letter variable's name is frequent, usually I, but also J, K, and other letters. But except for counters and iterators, it's generally better to avoid using a single letter variable name. Use meaningful and descriptive names. For example, book instead of BK, country instead of CNTR. Variable names should be descriptive and convey the purpose or meaning of the data they represent. This improves code readability and understanding. And when we talk about readability, it's not only for other people reading your code, but even for yourself. Even if it's you who wrote the code, you will have hard times when you'll have to come back later to debug your code and read it again, if the names are not meaningful and descriptive. Avoid built-in names. While not strictly prohibited, it's generally a good practice to avoid using names that are already built-in functions or modules in Python to prevent potential conflicts and confusion. Like these two examples using print as a variable name, or OS, which is a Python built-in module that allows interaction with the operating system. Thank you for watching. Before you leave, I want to challenge you to test your knowledge on variable naming conventions. I've prepared a short quiz on Google Forms to help reinforce what we've covered in this video. Click the link in the description below to take the quiz and see how well you've grasped the concepts. See you in the next video.